Hi, it's David Troyer with Intero Real Estate Services, and this is my continuing educational series on real estate in California. Today we're going to talk about two very important things, escrow and title insurance. My goal today is basically to get you familiar as a buyer or a seller on whose responsibility are for these two things, why are they involved in a transaction, and of course what is the process that they go through in the relationship to you as a buyer or a seller. So let's begin. Now, technically, escrow is the delivery or deposit of funds from one party for the final delivery at the end of a transaction to another party. Now, in the state of California, of course, our escrow companies basically act as a neutral third party between a buyer and a seller, getting them through that entire process. And I like to call them also the accountant of the transaction. So essentially, to be able to pass free and clear title from a seller to a new owner, which will be the buyer, they have to do the accounting to make sure all the debts, the liens, and things like that against the property are removed 100%. And they're, of course, legally liable for that, to do that for the seller. And then you as the buyer, of course, you might put on a new set of liens, which would be in most cases simply your new first loan on the property. Now, at the very end of that transaction, the title company has the responsibility to technically and legally process ownership from one party to another. But remember, as a neutral third party, they cannot favor one over the other. They simply are following directions. Now, obviously, say, well, what are the directions are they following? The purchase contract. So you as a seller or you as a buyer, remember, the title company is only going to follow unilateral decision points that were already agreed in writing by that purchase contract. Anything that changes that, remember, the title companies cannot move forward with any bit of a transaction without unilateral agreement between a buyer and a seller. So it's a very effective system in our state, and enjoyed by many realtors versus other states where you have to get a little more complicated and have lawyers involved. We use this escrow system to help us through a fast and easy transaction in most cases. Title insurance is basically an insurance policy for your house that, remember, is paid only once. And so if you own the house for 2 years, your title insurance policy, that particular policy will last during those 2 years. But then if you stay in the house for 25 years, that title insurance policy lasts for 25 years. So it's kind of an interesting instrument of insurance. So basic concept, though, is what is title insurance doing for you as a buyer? Because it's important for the buyer. It's basically saying, okay, buyer, you buy this house. The seller, through an insurance policy, is going to guarantee that there is no outstanding liens or debts or anything that can hurt the overall use and enjoyment of a property that wasn't explicitly defined in the purchase contract. Now, this is very important for a buyer, because what you would never want to happen is, find out a year after you purchased your dream home that the third cousin of the seller had rights to 25% of the house. Now, if that was the case, the title insurance would have to cover any losses or monies that would need to be distributed to that person if the original seller didn't take care of it. So it's a very, very important part of the process. Now, remember, in Santa Clara County, interestingly, the seller pays for both the escrow fee and the title insurance, but the title company and the escrow company are one and the same. Now, in San Mateo County, where I also do a lot of business, interestingly, the buyer pays. So it's been sort of an historical norm of how each of these counties have their business practice, but in 99% of the transactions we do, they follow their normative business practice. Santa Clara County, seller pays for title and escrow. San Mateo County, the buyer pays for title and escrow. So I hope that helps. If you have any further questions about title insurance and its importance in a transaction, please let me know.